we go.
Oh, good, you didn't
Okay.
record me.
Yeah, I know we didn't miss the content. That's good. Okay. And Mike Smith, over to
Hey,
you.
hi everybody. Glad to see you guys here today. Just want to remind everybody we're 5 weeks away from our annual conference. If you haven't signed up, please get registered uh, and get your hotel booked. Look forward to seeing you. We've got a great conference. The work that the conference committee has done is really fantastic. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, and with that, I'm going to present David. So, David, I'm going to stop the share here.
Okay.
I know that we were, going back and forth. If you have some slides, you can present them now. If you
Okay.
don't, then we can, chat.
Hang
So,
on. Let's see.
okay.
Where is my share?
While you're looking for that, I just want to let everybody know tomorrow is happy hour. So if
Oh,
you-
sorry. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
I know you were busy, no problem, Steve. Giving David some time. But yeah, if you need the invite, if you want to join, drop in, say hello, meet the folks, please do.
All right. Is that sharing?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thanks for having me. I really enjoy being part of this group because it's, as I said earlier, I think the level you take the discussion is something I just don't get to see. So your segue into this public sector, Steve, when you talked about the imposters, it's the perfect introduction to the public sector. Because I can tell you this. I mean, today I'm really not here as part of Sourcewell and talking about our cooperative contracts and all that. I mean, what we bring to the table is we have literally thousands of conversations a year with agencies across the whole country. And I think the value we bring is what they're telling us, what they're seeing, how they're feeling. And if we can share that, we're doing a service to them and we're doing service to people who serve them. So our whole mission as a government agency is to provide service. The interesting part is the more we serve them, the more we end up selling. So it's kind of an interesting flywheel we're on. But Steve, when you talked about the imposters, I got to tell you, if you don't know this, and I may be just beating this to death, but the public sector is all about trust. It is all about trust. Remember, those people are in public sector for a reason. They color between the lines. They like safety, security. The worst thing that can happen to somebody in the public sector is to be on the front page of the paper. So their whole mentality is whatever it is I'm trying to get done, I want to get it done. I'm entrusted with public money. I want to do the right thing, but I need to color between the lines. And so I'm going to use an analogy that's maybe a bit of a stretch, but I hope you can see it. So Amazon came into the public sector and people started saying, oh, we can buy all these incidentals we need. We have these purchasing cards. We can just buy stuff from Amazon, just like I do at home. And it doesn't have to be bid. It's under our threshold and it's super easy. And our response to that was, yeah, that makes total sense. Except, do you understand that Amazon is anything but a fair and open competition? And they said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, you understand that they manipulate what you see. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying they choose what you get to see. Oh, so they're manipulating what the opportunity is. And did you know a lot of those brands they have a vested interest in? And oh, by the way, did you know that with their advertising, when they talk about all this independent business that gets done with all these individuals, the reason they push that is their business model is to figure out who's successful in that space and then squash them like an ant and replace it with an Amazon product. So I'm not saying using Amazon's bad, but the mere fact that you say it's not fair and open makes the hair on the back of their neck stand up. And said, I'd never really thought of it that way. I said, hey, I use Amazon all the time at home, but in a business setting, it just doesn't make sense. And when you're in the public sector and you're buying whatever they put in front of your nose, I really don't know that you're being the professional you should be. So this whole integrity piece is huge. And we run into it all the time. And one other quick story, again, related, but from my consulting career back before I was in public sector, I was working doing an estate plan that's what I did as business and estate planning. I had a client, he said, Dave, been talking to my financial guy. He wants me to buy this annuity. And I said, oh, okay. So he showed me and he said he wants me to put 200 grand in. I said, makes sense to me. I mean, annuities aren't good or bad. They're tax deferred, but sure. So I looked at it and I said, Bob, did you know there's an 11-year surrender charge? And the surrender charge starts at 11%. He goes, oh, I know, but, I mean, I don't think I'll be touching the money. He said, oh, I get that. What I want you to know, Bob, is that 11% surrender charge is it's pretty much equal to his commission. He said, what? I said, so when your guy sells you this annuity, you're going to put that 200 grand in and he's going to make $22,000. And he said, really? I said, yeah, again, not bad, but he gets it all up front and that's it. Oh, he said, so what do you think I should do? And I said, well, there's a bunch of products out there that have a much smaller load. Here's what I want you to do, Bob. I want you to call your insurance agent and I want you to ask him just one question. And he said, what's that? I said, you call him up and ask him if he sells any annuities that have a higher commission than this one.
Right.
So literally in front of me, he dials the guy up and goes, hey, I have my estate planner here. And, he doesn't sell investment products, but I do have one question. He said, he asked me to ask you, do you sell any annuities that pay a higher commission? And there was a pause. And he said, that's all I needed to hear. And he slammed down the phone.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Where are you taking me? And what are you doing? So
right.
I think that what you do, and again, I'm always railing about the public sector, but first and foremost, the one thing they hate is sort of a sucker punch. So this whole idea, now, our approach has always been, I never impugn the integrity of somebody else. I let them figure that out. All I do is share facts with them and say, well, if I was in your shoes and playing amateur consultant, did you know, and did you know? And think do you really think that guy's working for $20 an hour? I mean, do you really think that's the game? Or do you think there's maybe something on the back end? And how do you know what that is? And given the choice, what do you think? You think he's going to do what's right for you or good for him? I can't answer that question. My question is all about the integrity piece. And how will you know that unless you ask? So I think what we've done in the public sector is, for example, the other co-ops across the country are for profit. We're a government agency. By definition, we cannot make money. So I said, I really don't care if you use our contract or not. You know what? If it's not the best deal, don't do it. They're just not ready for that conversation. When I walk away and say, you need to do what's best for you. And if we're not the best deal, let me know. But would you do me one thing? If you don't use us, would you tell me why? Because I'd like to be able to go back to our suppliers or vendors and say, hey, they chose not to use us and fill in the blanks. One of the things, another phrase, and again, I think it's universally applicable in the public sector, is I had a lady walk up to me, kind of point her finger at me and say, David, are you going to guarantee I get the best price? And so what do you think I told her? I looked her in the eye and I said, Helen, I can guarantee you won't get the best price. And she paused and I said, and here's why. It is Black Friday someplace every day. I guarantee that if you look long enough and hard enough, you will find a better price than you can through my supplier. I absolutely guarantee it. The question is, are you going to find it? Is it going to be on the end cap? Is it what you need? And oh, by the way, what is your time worth? And when you factor in all of that, all I can tell you is you're going to get a very fair price. You're going to actually get a great price doing this. And it's available 24/7, 365, and there's consistency and integrity behind it. So I think what you do, and again, I'm preaching to the choir now in your practice management to say, I don't think you should ever underestimate your value. And Chuck, you say, yeah, we all have ego. Of course you do. But you know what? You're worth it. And I think in the public sector, you've heard me say it, and I'll talk about some of that at the conference, but I can't tell you how badly they need your expertise. There's no way that public sector can afford the kind of expertise you bring to the table. They just can't. There's no chance there's an IT guy on staff who knows a tenth of what you do. They're lucky if they can plug and play the software, much less figure out how to do voice and data. I mean, there's just no chance. So what can they do? They can rent your services and say, oh, so now I just bought a fractional share of somebody with amazing talent. I mean, it's no secret, but in the public sector, they are more and more open to that. And I think you heard me last year talk about visibility. These projects tend to be very high optics, lots of eyes on the project, lots of downside if you do the wrong thing, lots of people peering in. So what you bring to the table is that sense of security. And the other interesting thing I'm finding about the public sector is even though they'll never say it to a supplier or maybe even a consultant, the one thing they hate is the cheapest solution. And that's where bidding is becoming such a problem for them. So Steve, you've asked me before, how in the world did you guys get to 13 billion in sales?
Right.
The reason is because we simplify the process and they get to pick their supplier. So if you think about them in the phone business, they said, hey, I want Mitel. Great. And I'm just doing that because Dave's on the line. So they said, well, I can do that. And I know I'm going to get unbelievably good pricing, as good a pricing as I can get on my own bid. If I do a bid, God only knows who I'm going to end up with. Because I will tell you right now, it's one of the reasons they use you to do bids, because they write lousy bids. And they confess that to me all the time, right? Man, we write lousy bids. I just saw one 2 weeks ago where the technology was obsolete, had been for 3 or 4 years. Not surprising. So your professional help is so sorely needed. So why would you benefit from using our contract? Here's the only commercial I'll do. If I was you, instead of doing an RFP that's binding, no matter how good it is, do an RFI. And then if the pricing comes in and one supplier's 3% higher than another, you could still use our contract and say the 3% is worth it. Now, most of you write good enough bids to where you have the ability to do that anyway. But we're not eliminating your ability to get paid to do that work and do the vetting. But they need professional help. That all gets back to that whole trust thing. So again, I'm going to say, why public sector? Well, here's a little graph we have. And, government spend, good or bad, up or down, government spend has been going up over the last 5 years, 6%. Actually, that's an inflated number. The real number is about 2 or 3% and has been literally forever. Good times, bad times, those budgets go up 2 to 3% a year. The 6% is tainted by all the CARES and federal money and all that funding, that lump sum they got, which basically doubled the rate. But long term, year in and year out, those budgets are going up 1, 2, 3%, always across the board.
Dave,
So
what is
why
the gold and what is the gold in the gray? I can't see the bottom of the graph.
The blue or the gray is government spend. The gold is our rate of increase.
Funny you should ask.
Which is last year was 49%, which means we grew almost, if the real growth was really 3 to 4%, we grew 20 times as fast as the market did, because they're using our solution to get to the vendor that they want. And so we're seeing the government sector and the public sector overall more and more becoming less agnostic and more brand specific. And the easy one is when it comes to heavy equipment. I'm a green shop. I like yellow. I like red. I like blue. I like orange. Whatever it is, we see it a lot in law enforcement. We see it a lot in fire. But we're seeing it also in technology where they'll say, this is the brand I want. Great. So the public sector is really looking at quality and people that can deliver, because one of the reasons they hire you is to do that RFP for them, because, right, they don't even, first of all, they don't know how to write, even spec it. What's worse is after they spec it, they don't even know how to evaluate the responses, right? Which again, exposes the imposter. You guys mentioned chat and AI. Oh my God. In the public sector now, Joe's Tacos and technology can look as good as anybody else. And they're going to lowball it because anybody can be a reseller for anybody. But you know what? Public agencies aren't asking that. They're saying, do you do this? Yep. Can you do it for me? Yep. They don't ask, have you ever done it before? Are you certified? Is it scalable? I mean, they aren't asking those questions. So invariably, it's a race to the basement for the cheapest alternative that everybody knows isn't going to win them. And again, no secret to you, but I have to hammer that home on the public sector. When the public sector goes out to bid, if you haven't written it, God help them what they're going to end up with. We are seeing more and more agencies write a lousy RFP and then say, oh my God, they're coming out of the woodwork. I got 40 responses. So you know what they'll do? They almost never fail their own RFP. It just politically, that's kind of a disaster. So what they do is they just don't award. And then they turn around and out the back door use our contract. It's funny to watch. But once they put out their RFP, there's just a certain stigma with pulling it off the street, even though in most cases they have a legal ability to do so. So this whole procurement process, if they don't even know how to spec the project, how in the world can they go out and procure it and expect to know what they're doing? They gotta have your expertise. And I'm not just saying that to play to you guys. It's the honest to God truth. They have no expertise. I'm at the home office today and our IT people, they're like, my folks are lucky if they can load the software and do the updates. I mean, sorry, we're a government agency. We can't afford the kind of help we should. We had one of you write our last bid for us. That we hired one of your consultants to say, we don't look like buffoons. So when we send it out, the suppliers don't go, do you guys know anything at all about cloud or hybrid or prem or any of that stuff? We didn't want to look like idiots, because the last thing you want to do is send it out and they go, are you kidding me? So public sector is in dire straits when it comes to the expertise. Okay, so that's part one. Part two is let's talk about the financial condition of the public sector. They're always starved for money. They're always budgeting battle, right? Every university, we have declining enrollment, and what are we going to do? And what programs do we have to cut? That's all you hear about. In public schools, imagine having to set a budget, not knowing how much money you have till the next spring. Does that make your head hurt? So we're gonna go to the school year in the fall, right? We just started school in Minnesota yesterday. Perfect. And I don't really know how much money I'm going to have until May or June. That's insanity, but that's how it works. So they're putting their thumb up, doing the best they can. The real uncertainty is they've learned to live with that. Mm-hmm. What they haven't learned to live with is this new White House, and this isn't political, I'm yanking your funding. Wait a minute. That changes the game. That has never happened before. That was at least the money they could count on. They didn't know if they were going to get their local aid or what the state was going to do and all that. Now that the federal rug has been pulled out, now we have triage going on. Now we're talking about bodies. Now we're talking about programs, class size, cutting bone, cutting meat, not the fat. I mean, actual programs. The mere threat of that. And again, fear freezes people. Greed motivates them. That's where show the money comes in. Fear freezes people. Oh my God, what do? I'm frozen into inaction. Well, I don't know, Dave, if I'm going to get my federal funding. Okay, so let's take a break, take a breath. Let's talk about the things that are wants and things that are needs. So I'm going to make this a broader concept, but put it into your own practice because it applies. So you're still going to need toilet paper in the building. Got to have it. Got to have Jan-San supplies, right? You got to have the lights on and you got to have light bulbs. You got to be able to clean the place. You still got to have buses. You still got, whatever it is, there are going to be essentials that we can't avoid. What's one of those that they tend not to talk about? When we look at GovWin and Deltec and all the government spend stuff, and we said, even during COVID, come hell or high water, what are you going to spend on? Technology was always at the top of the list. I got to have technology, right? We do e-learning, we do remote learning. We're doing that in the classroom. We got to have Wi-Fi. We've got to have connectivity. We've got to have secure storage. We've got, the list goes on and on and on. Something they can't afford not to have. That's where you come in. That's where you're going to say, something as simple as expense audit. Yeah. How many schools and government agencies still have landlines? Literally 100%, I'm guessing. Well, if they're going to do that, Are they even managing that? Do they even know what they're paying? I mean, I know enough about your business to say, have you ever looked at that? Oh, we would never do that expense. Today, they're looking for every single angle possible. Well, what are you doing about this program? What are you about? So cybersecurity, mass notification, those things aren't going away. They're heightened. I don't know if you know this about school superintendents. Their life expectancy, not their life expectancy, their life expectancy of the superintendent in a school is 4 years. That hasn't changed in decades. A 3-year contract, they're always looking for their next job. So a 3-year contract, either it gets renewed, they might make it to 6, or they didn't get renewed and they get a new job in the 4th year. Okay, what does that tell you about the guy at the top? He's a ladder climber and he's going somewhere, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but they're all looking for the next bigger district, the next bigger job, right? 4-year tenure. So what would be a deal killer for a superintendent of schools? How about having their student information hacked? So, and I know many of you have heard me tell the story, but it's worth telling again. So cybersecurity, we couldn't get superintendents interested. Oh, only Target and only banks get hacked. We couldn't get superintendents to even care. So we changed the narrative and said, would it be a career killer if your student information was out in the public purview and it's on the front page of the local and, by the way, the regional newspaper? And they said, oh my God, well, then maybe you should care about cyber and security. All of a sudden, superintendents were incredibly interested. And they went to IT and said, are you making sure this doesn't happen? Are you making sure we budgeted for that? So again, I think it's looking at the white space. In the case of cyber going back a decade, it was all about, you're asking me to solve a problem I don't think I have. I wonder how many times we've walked by the solution saying, how do I help you understand that you have this problem and you need to solve for it? You've all been through that with Carey's Law and Ray Baum, right? All of that. Well, that doesn't apply to me, does it? I don't think so. I don't know. Right. Yeah, until something happens. So I think this public sector space, the unavoidable thing about, well, you got to have communications. They got to be secure. You got to have some kind of mass notification. These are all things that said, have you done this? I mean, it's a pretty simple conversation. Either they have or either they haven't. I mean, but I'm amazed how many people say, I think we have that handled. Are you sure? Are you really sure you do? So again, I'm not telling you how to apply your trade. You're way better at that than I am. All I'm saying is, I think sometimes there's a comfort level. They're so busy doing so many things, they forget about some of the Captain Obvious. And I think when we expose that whole mentality, which is, don't forget they're in government service for a reason. They color between the lines. They are not risk takers. There's no opportunity for them. There's no upside in going outside the box. Color between the lines, but let's make sure we've got this whole thing locked down. I think that's a huge opportunity for all of you. So I want to spend at least a few minutes talking about show me the money. And it's something I've talked about before. Right now, it's the biggest talk track there is. You know, I'd love to do that project, but we don't have the money. We just don't have the budget. Okay. Well, so what we're going to do is we're going to phase it. We'll do a little this year. We'll do a little next year. We'll do a little. So we're going to do this over 4 years. And I'll use an example that's sort of, I want to be smart. I don't even know what smart is. You don't buy, I want to be a smart city. It doesn't come in a box. What do you mean? You mean smart lighting, smart security, smart infrastructure, access control? What are you talking? What did you understand? There's 19 variations of that. Well, no. The reason I want to be a smart city is the mayor wants to get it reelected. Let's be honest. That's why they want to be smart. They don't even know what it is. Well, we want to be one of those 5G cities. Do you know what that takes? Well, yeah, don't they just have to beam that stuff from a satellite? Well, they could, and then the autonomous vehicles would run off the side of the road because of the latency. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. So helping them understand. So in this whole project thing, I want to talk to you about tax-free municipal leasing. And it isn't a commercial for this. This is a tool you should all be talking about. I have a need now, but I don't have the money. I don't have the CapEx budget. I might have it in my operating budget. I'm not sure. But the best way for me to solve this is, why don't I phase it over 4 years? Well, you're going to tell me that the government sector doesn't pay interest, they pay cash for everything. That went away, folks, during the pandemic. The pandemic changed all that. I need 2,400 Chromebooks and I need them tomorrow for my second graders, but you don't have any money. Oh, I'm going to find you the money. You can lease those Chromebooks. You can lease them over 3 years and your first payment's a year from now. Really? Yeah, we'll deliver them to you. You can lease them. You can have a 3-year lease. You can pay for them over 3 years, and your first payment's not until your next fiscal year. And oh, by the way, with a tax-free municipal lease, because it's a tax-free municipal lease is not a 3-year lease, it's 3 one-year leases. Because in the government sector, you can have a non-appropriations clause. If you have to appropriate every year for that lease payment through your appropriation process, that makes it an operating expense, which you can take it out of your operating budget, not your capital budget. What? Yeah, so you're going to pay for that Chromebook over 3 years, and you're going to pay for it out of your operating budget. You can pay for it out of your capital budget, but you don't have to. And we can make your first payment in arrears starting next year. Well, my budget in Minnesota, the budget's June 30. So they said, oh, could we get them in June? Yeah, but I'm not going to have the money till August. No problem. There's no prepayment penalty. You can pay it all or pay none of it or pay some of it. Doesn't matter. Using this tool to help them find the money, they said, well, but we would never pay interest. Here's when it makes sense to pay interest. When the rate of inflation is higher than the rate of interest. Just let that sink in for a second. What is the cost of whatever you want to buy next year and you're phased? Let's assume we're doing a fourth year for 4 years. What is the cost going to be next year? Is it 9% higher? Is it 12? Is it 15? How much did it go up this past year? If that price is going up, it might make more sense to buy it today and pay interest as opposed to paying the inflated price, which may or may not be there. You mean I can solve the whole data center problem right now? You mean I can cable the entire building and upgrade it all right now? Yes, you can. And you can pay for it over the useful life rather than your traditional sense in the public sector, which is, well, we pay cash for everything. I just want that to sink in when it comes to financing. I'm not saying you're out there, they can do any kind of financing they want. And you're going to say, that's off the table. That's old news. That's in the rearview mirror. There are more and more people using finance. They can also bond for it. They've been bonding for it forever, except they're huge capital projects. And what happens when there's uncertainty in the economy? Bond issues and referendums are really, really tenuous right now. Oh, I don't think I can spend $112 a month for the kids anymore. I don't think so. Maybe in the old days, but I'm not sure. They might eliminate my Social Security. My Medicare might go away. And those are the people that are voting. Like it or not, the demographic. Those are the people. And remember, a school referendum is at best case going to pass 55-45. They never pass 90-10. They're always right on the edge. So now we're looking at a pot of money that may or may not happen. And it's usually ginormous amounts of money. I'm talking about leasing something like the whole infrastructure, the thing you put in. It's $100,000. We don't have $100,000. How about $25,000 a year for 4 years? Again, you're not providing the product. You're the agnostic, third-party professional. You're the independent consultant saying, I see more and more people doing this, and it's happening every day. Here's a slide we showed of vendors. And this astounded me. It's not our quote. We got this out of Forbes. If a vendor just offers financing in the public sector, 30% higher closing ratios. That astounded me. Not that they actually used financing. They just brought it up. Said, hey, well, this is a big capital expense. Yeah, but you can pay for it over 7 years. You can pay for it over 5 years. You don't have to pay for it all up front. Oh, well, I've been putting that money away, saving up for this project. And you know what? Now we have these emergency needs and they're sucking money out of my capital budget. Oh, maybe you pay for it out of your operating budget. I think you can get bigger projects done if you help them find the money. So I'll stop there. Questions? Is this helpful? This is about
extremely.
This is a segment that needs your help, folks. You've heard me preach that. I'll preach it again at the conference. But I think we have to pivot a little bit in our approach, right? And we have to say, what is the message that's going to resonate with them? And when we do, you're there to help.
So a couple of things, but one is specifically, David, again, you alluded to it. is the fact that, again, general federal funds are being yanked, if you will, reduced, and they've never faced anything like this, right? At
Never.
least in our history, right? And so I think this one option right here is creative financing that would get them. So what are you seeing in general in this year, even into next year? Are you seeing, from your vantage point as Sourcewell, are you seeing an increase in work? Or I mean, like, are the projects stopping, or are they getting creative, or
So I think this, when we mentioned, that proverbial fiscal cliff, real or imagined, it's still there,
Mhm,
right?
sure.
There was a lot of, all of these people are used to mandates. The state says you got to do this. Now they got to do it without any money to do it, whatever the program is. They have a history of that. What they don't have a history of is the federal funds may in fact not be there or aren't going to
Mhm.
be there, or the
Right.
program got cut.
Mhm.
So this is unprecedented. So
Yeah.
anything you can do and say, but what is it going to take to keep the lights on? You can have fewer teachers, but you can't have zero, right?
Hmm.
You still got to have guys clean the streets.
Hmm.
But can I put off buying the new snowplow for a year? Maybe that's in the we can get out there. But what about infrastructure? What about technology? At the speed with which this is moving, from COVID, we're already in refresh mode. My God, right? The technology, they said, what are we going to do with all this remote stuff? And we got everybody at home. We got all those. Well, it's refresh time already. So I think there's a place where you say, I really can't cut corners on this. And so I think that's the strike zone. That's the stuff we're seeing. That's got a priority over we could use a new school bus. Oh, you know what? We can limp along with that school bus for one more year, right?
Right. Right. So let me ask you along that, and Chuck, I see you're raising your hand. Just give me one more second here. So, in private sector, we do a lot in terms of ROI analysis, right? Where we can manage down costs, of various things. It's all hard dollar. So when we've typically worked in, city and state government before, it's a moot point. They don't really care a whole lot about ROI. But is that showing up more from where you sit, do you know? As
I
like a
think
net to help pay for the project, or
I think so. I think what's happening is it's not ROI, it's managing the cost of the project,
got it.
right?
Okay.
It's that 100 grand versus 30 grand a year for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
it's not the so ROI is like, well, I don't even know what that is. Is that road outside improvements? Right? They don't.
Right. Right.
But if you say the question is, does it make some sense to pay in a lump sum, or does it make sense to pay over time? And let's do, so if we can bring you higher productivity, lower costs, all those things that get built in, you can
Mm-hmm.
say, you need this infrastructure. What happens if you get it in place today?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I think that's the ROI alternative, if you will. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
now
Sure.
it turns into cash flow, right?
Exactly. So, Chuck, you have a question. Thanks, David.
Yeah, I do, and I'll try to lower my hand. When you talk about school buses, Dave, I always get a chuckle about a sign I saw a few years ago in my neighborhood. It said, "Wanted, school bus drivers, no experience necessary." And I thought, you kidding me? That's not exactly giving me a comfort about how safe my kid's going to get
Like,
to school.
Yeah, I
But in
think I'm
any,
going to drive my kids to school.
yeah. So my question to you is, for most of the work that we do as consultants, we're not doing a lot of consulting on school buses or stuff like that, but we are consulting on technology platforms. And there's been a big shift from a CapEx spend to an OpEx spend. So I guess two questions. How does that impact your model and what you do at Sourcewell? And how does that impact the advice you're giving us today?
So, the let me just say the traditional CapEx model was for major purposes, right? Major projects, the traditional CapEx kinds of things. The ability to play one budget against the other using tax-free municipal leasing is changed the game in that regard. But the thing we do know about budgets is the OpEx side, they have way more flexibility than they do on the CapEx side, right? Because the board, the city council, whoever those people are, who aren't they're certainly not government finance people. The first thing that gets looked at is we can slash the CapEx budget. I mean, that's visible, that's big stuff, and we can wait another year to repair the roof. I mean, it's sort of that naive. And the trouble is, those governing boards don't have, I would say by and large, we're finding, have little or no experience in government finance. They don't have a clue how it works. They might be a successful car dealer, but they have no idea how all these buckets of money on the public sector say, oh, we can't touch that money. Oh, that's over here. Oh, that was grant money. Oh, that was federal money. We have to spend it this way. I think the poster child for that are airports, right? Because they all have different governing bodies. Then they have all these P3 partnerships, and then they got the FAA also. So not only do they have procurement rules at whatever their governance level is, then they have the FAA saying, here's what you can do, and here's what you can't do, and here's what you can use with this bucket, and here's what, I mean, you talk about the hardest procurement job in the world, it's them. And they have one of the greatest needs, like for private wireless and for other, other infrastructure pieces. So Chuck, I don't know if that answered the question, but I think this whole budget idea of just supposing for a moment it didn't have to come out of your CapEx, would that change the way you look at solving this problem? And sometimes I will tell you, using tax-free municipal leasing, people are like, that sounds too good to be true. What's the hook? Or my board will never go for it. I think doing the math and saying you can afford it. You can afford 30 grand a year for 3 years or 4 years instead of $125,000 up front. Or maybe you want to pay for some of that out of your CapEx, and then finance the rest. Again, just a creative way. I think when they apply the cost, when they use life cycle costing, like everybody does for heavy equipment, they're better off, and they're starting to look at that, right? Does that answer it, or sort of, Chuck?
I think sort of, yeah. I mean, it's a new dynamic that we're seeing, that it no longer, a lot of public agencies are just saying, you know what, we're going to circumvent the normal procurement process because it's an OpEx. We're going to pilot something, we're going to do it, we're going to sole source it. So we're finding in public sector that the old way of, hey, we're writing the big fat RFP is not necessarily the go-to desire for a lot of public, that they're looking at creative ways to procure, and OpEx gives them kind of an easy entry and a low risk way to maybe get around the big RFP.
And Chuck, so instead of getting paid to do an RFP, you get paid to manage the project, because they also don't know how to manage it, right? It's one of the biggest issues we see in the public sector. Oh, I did the bid, but now what do I do? Because there's a service component to this, and I just signed a contract for 4 years. Who's keeping watch on that?
Well, David,
Who's
what
managing?
we're seeing, David, is that organizations, public sector especially, are saying, you know what, we don't need a formal RFP. We've got the capacity to narrow it down or buy off some kind of pre-negotiated contract. So I think that's an area that you folks can support.
That's why they're using us. But I would tell you, Chuck, we're seeing, you mentioned sole source. That's getting tougher and tougher and tougher, because there's nobody who can really claim anymore they're the only sole source out there and you don't have to bid it. Some people are still doing it. More and more auditors are saying, I can't believe there's only one provider of that, whatever it happens to be. So that's why using our contract makes sense, because they can say, well, I can still pick the vendor I want. I can still pick them to do it, but it's not sole source, but it still satisfies the bid requirement. Mm-hmm. So I think it's that creative way about, how do I get from A to B? We're interested in the integrity of the rules. The question is, we're not going to show you how to avoid or circumvent it. We're going to show you how to compliance is still a big deal. Can I really spend $100 grand on this lease and it doesn't have to go for board approval? No, it doesn't. You know why? Because it's the 7-year lease is 7 one-year leases. That doesn't require board approval. It doesn't require voter approval. What a huge difference as opposed to a referendum or any other kind of financing. And again, why am I a big fan? Just because it's creative and it's something new to talk about. And oh, by the way, it works. That helps.
Dave Clardy, got a question, right?
Just a comment that's why subscription has become so prevalent to Chuck's comment about
Mhm.
public sector wanting OpEx versus a CapEx, and then you get that investment down the road, and you can actually turn it into a capital purchase if you wanted to, but you're not at the mercy of a public cloud situation. You can do subscription.
Mhm.
And it's
The
probably
other
the
thing
fastest.
we're seeing, just real quickly, is Minnesota year ends June 30. Think what happens on June 10th. They know how much CapEx money they have left. They got to spend it, right? In 3 weeks, they got to cut the PO, take delivery, and pay for it. Well,
Mhm.
one of the things they can do with financing is they can choose to pay down the lease or say, we're going to prepay 7 payments and help our OpEx next year, and we can do something else. So I think that budget flexibility, to your point, Dave, is a big deal, right? To say, oh, I'd much rather spread out the payments. And it's kind of under the radar in lots of ways, right? Because remember, every CapEx thing goes to the school board or the city council at every meeting, and it's in the paper, and everybody knows. You're spending $169,000 on what? Is that why my taxes are going up? I mean, nobody needs that.
So that brings it to another question, and I know we only have 2 minutes left. How about public-private cloud versus premises, especially when you're dealing with cities that have life safety, i.e. police, fire, other, life contingent type services. Do you see any movement, in either of those 3 directions, or?
I do. I'm reminded of an SCTC session where you said, let's argue which is more secure, cloud or prem, which I thought was fascinating. I remember that vividly.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're saying is, how are you going to make that decision? What's your preconceived notion?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, City? Do you think prem is more secure? That may or may not be true. Have you talked to somebody who actually knows the difference, who's not selling you something? Again, there's another opportunity for you, I think, to say, let us guide you through that, right? Or we've seen, again, I'll probably butcher it, but we've seen some hybrid. We can do some in the cloud and we can do some prem, and we're migrating, and this is how we can afford it. And I think that's terribly creative stuff. It's stretching that dollar. But first and foremost, say, well, here's the minimum. I mean, security and privacy is a big deal, and we need to make sure you're protected first and foremost. The public sector, the last thing you want is to be on the paper that we had a data breach, whatever that is, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So just closing comment or advice for us consultants, any advice from the mountain there on your end, how we can be even more engaged with the public sector?
They don't have any money. They're difficult. It's hard. That's all the reasons to do it, because nobody else is. Your lazy competitors are looking for the score. Do the work, put in the work, build the credibility. And I would say, I'd also think in practice management, I wouldn't just elephant hunt. Lots of those littler gigs at maybe smaller amounts to say, I can fill a crack here, as lead to continuous, geez, you did that small project, and now you do this, now you can do this. So I think, again, looking at the market and saying, if some of those, if you're going to live and die with major projects and they get put out a year, now what do you do? So I think from a practice management side, again, not telling you how to run your business, but some of those gap fillers that said, we usually don't do projects of that size, can lead to a lot of future business. And some of them you can say, geez, I can do that in my sleep. That's an easy one. So I think you just ask the question. They're forthright. They'll tell you if they know or don't. The IT people are a little defensive in public sector. They're in public sector for a reason, because they aren't good enough for the private sector. Sorry, we see that a lot. So they're hiding in public sector. Become their friend and say, I'm here to make you look good, not bad.
Yeah. Hey, right. Exactly right.
I'm going to
Well
help
said.
you make the recommendation so you're a shining star instead
Yeah.
of, right, the guy who boned the project. And now
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks for the wisdom there, David. It was fantastic. I took plenty of notes. I'm always learning when I attend one of your sessions. So thank you, and looking forward to seeing you in Reno. And thanks everybody for joining
Thanks, David.
today.
I'll see you there.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye
Thanks.
now.
Bye.